everybody, my name is Kayla and welcome back to my channel. So I have gotten a lot of requests over my TikTok, my Instagram, and on here to make some Dungeons and Dragons content about D&D, because for those who may not know or don't follow me on some of the other accounts where I'm more active, like my Instagram and TikTok, I play a lot of D&D, and I recently got into it in about a year and a half ago, I want to say, and it completely changed my life. And so today I just wanted to share kind of like my story within that, how I got into D&D, misconceptions about Dungeons and Dragons, and kind of also like the pipeline of being a reader, specifically like a fantasy reader, and how that often leads to D&D. Okay, so to start, you may be saying, Kayla, what's D&D? Because Dungeons and Dragons is something that has existed for a while, but it hasn't really hit the mainstream. At least I wasn't, like, I always kind of heard D&D growing up. I had cousins who were really into gaming, different board games, different video games, so I had heard D&D fairly often growing up, but I never really understood what it was per se. And something that's interesting is actually Dungeons and Dragons hit a lot of the mainstream media, at least as far as I'm aware, with Stranger Things. In season 1 they played, I believe. I've only seen the first season. But a lot of people in college, specifically in one of my classes that I've talked to about D&D, have all mentioned, like a large amount of them, granted it's only like 5 people, that they first heard about D&D from Stranger Things and stuff like that. So I just wanted to like put that in there because I thought that was kind of like fun, at least in my experience, because, you know, we all consume media differently and are exposed to different types of media. That's where I first heard of it, and I was like, wow, that sounds cool. And then in high school, some of my guy friends had a campaign going. They were already like going, and so I was like, can I join? And they were like, no. And I was like, great. This is fine. And then the pandemic happened and it wasn't a big deal anyway. However, words are hard. Flash forward like about a year and it's December, and I have some friends and a mutual at the time that I had worked with on some projects before, Locky Heart Cosplay, Lexi, who's now literally one of my best friends, offered to DM and run a campaign for me and some of my friends. And so we kind of like formed this little group, and Lexi kind of brought us all together in her homebrewed campaign, which homebrew means like she came up with it herself. So like in D&D you have like books and set adventures, but she designed this world. It's called Airglade. Lexi, if you're watching this, I love you and Airglade so much. And that's pretty much how I met some of my best friends over the past year and a half, and D&D and joining that group. And then I additionally joined a different group also completely changed my life, and literally overnight I went from being like, what's D&D, to being completely invested in it. I started watching shows like Dimension 20, Critical Role, listening to podcasts like Not Another D&D Podcast, and found myself being like, this existed for most of my life and I'm just now getting around to playing it. Dungeons and Dragons is essentially a book come to life, and they are fantasy setting adventures where you get to design your own character. There are pre-made classes and races you can play, or you can design your own. And so you make a character, you get together with some friends, and you have a DM or a GM, a dungeon master or a game master, who guides you. They're essentially the narrator of the story, and you can follow like books that look like this, that have like worlds and everything, or you can homebrew and your DM can create their own world. And it's basically creativity meets theater meets RP, LARP, and fantasy books. That's like the best way I can like conceptualize it for you. But D&D is amazing. It's basically you get together with your friends or a group of people and you play a campaign and you explore a world. You create a story together, you follow a story. Literally, like, the options are endless for whatever type of character, whatever type of player you want to be, whatever type of world you want to explore. It's literally like, D&D is just whatever you want it to be, and it's amazing. And as a reader, when you read a book, you get pulled into it. But imagine that, except your choices impact the story. Like, I know there's like choose your own adventure books, or like they're like flip but imagine reading one of your favorite books where you are one of the main characters, where your stories, your roles, because D&D is dictated by dice. I can show you some of mine. This is my fancy little to-go like dice thing, because I own a lot of dice because I'm a dice goblin and I don't do anything halfway. And it pops off, and then here's where I roll, and then here's my most commonly used dice, which I'm not going to go into details now, but I just got sidetracked and really wanted to show you it, because in D&D a lot of your rolls and how things progress is determined by dice rolls, which sounds very complicated, and it kind of is, but I swear you get the hang of it. With the roll of the dice, with an improv moment, you can change an entire narrative, an entire story. D&D is customizable. It's a book come to life. It is every fantasy experience you have ever wanted to do, like, again, brought to life. And I feel like there are so many readers, at least I know on TikTok, who are like, oh my god, I love the sound of D&D, but like, I don't know how to start. And so if you guys want me to make a video that dives in deeper on how you can start, because I was very lucky where I got like roped in by 2 different groups where they were like, yeah, I'll help you. And I have 2 amazing DMs and like 2 amazing groups that really like took me in and taught me how to play. And for me, it was very easy, and sometimes it can be difficult finding a group and like finding a DM or becoming a DM. So let me know if you guys would be interested in like an in-depth video, because I feel like if I talk about all of that right now, it might just be too much, and I don't want to overwhelm you more than I already am, because as you can tell, I'm very excited and very passionate about this. But let me know if you want a video on that, and a video explaining D&D, how it works, dice, GMs, DMs, all the terms I'm throwing around. I can take time to really dive into that for you. But I feel like that's a pretty good surface explanation, at least I hope it is. So yeah, so let me know if you're interested. But I started playing D&D, kind of coming back full circle, and it just took off and became such a big part of my life. I started playing D&D in a time where I was very, very depressed. It was January 2021, I believe, is the first time I ever played, and then December of 2020 was when I first built and started designing my first character, Thora, which I feature a lot on my TikTok. Follow me if you're not. And my life completely changed, because books have always gotten me through really, really hard times in my life, and 2020 was just a shit show. And especially the fall of 2020, my entire life felt like it was coming together and then just fell apart, and I felt very lost and confused, and I was growing up and discovering who I was as a person, and, you know, like yada yada yada. And I got to a point in January, I started school, and I was just like, how can I life? How am I supposed to, like, I don't know how to do this. And I hit a very scary low point. And it's something that I'm still healing and bouncing back from. It's one of the reasons why I haven't been posting content regularly since then on YouTube. It's a very, very scary moment happened. And D&D was one of those things that saved me. And for the first time in my life, I remember not being able to escape into books. Like, I would try, and usually books always worked, but I couldn't get there. I could not get that escapism. I could not, for the first time, books couldn't make me feel like I was okay. But D&D did. And now I'm so lucky to have a very good system with therapy, support, and a balance of D&D and books for escapism, because we all love an escapism moment to deal with things and stuff like that. But D&D came into my life and was a shining light, not only because of the people I met, some of my best friends, friendships that are formed, and the groups that I found and support in that, but also the characters I got to create, the stories I got to feel involved in.